I saw good leadership at home in my hometown with my mom, the mayor, and she ran it like a family. She, the whole community. Let's mow those ditches. Let's get rid of those old buildings. Let's clean up our town. Let's have some community picnic. Let's take care of each other. That mindset of a small town is so significant for all of us from little towns in North Dakota. When I got to Fargo, I moved here. This last time, I've been here 3 times, but I co-own the High Plains Reader newspaper. A chunk of my life I've been in the media. And through that process, I learned to put on the lens of studying government, seeing how they operate, seeing what's going on behind the scenes, learning their way of doing business and so on, and also looking for transparency and accountability. That translates pretty well to what I do. I had 8 years on the school board, and then when I ran and got elected in 2016, the biggest issue in my mind in the city at that time was the opioid crisis. I didn't even know how to say opioid or spell it then. And it became a train wreck coming down the tracks at us. And I think we did a remarkably good job addressing that. In 2020, my big issue was I was going to lead the effort to settle this lawsuit with the FM diversion. I delivered on that. So going forward, I hope I get 4 more years to wrap it up and continue my service for the people.
Thank you. Michelle Turnberg.
Hello, my name is Michelle Turnberg, and I thank you for inviting us today for this forum and the opportunity to speak to everyone. I've lived in Fargo for the last 30 years. I went to Concordia College, where I have a degree in biology, and also Moorhead State University, where I went and I have a degree in mass communication and broadcast journalism. I worked in the local media for about 16 years, getting to know people by coming into their living rooms at night and earning their trust that way. I got to know the workings of the city and many of the challenges that we faced as a community during that time. I decided to step up and run for city commission after I was approached with the idea by some passionate community members. And I thought, why not run? Instead of complaining about what's going on, it's best to step up and serve and do something about it. So that's why I decided to do that and become a part of the community. Some of the top issues I believe in is that we should focus on representing all of Fargo, focusing on law enforcement and first responders, employing thoughtful and measured growth strategies and budgeting, and addressing issues such as drug addiction and homelessness. I believe that all of these issues can be addressed by returning common sense to the City Commission. Thank you.
Thank you. Arlette Preston.
Good afternoon. My name is Arlette Preston. I have been living in Fargo for 40-some years. I have a nursing background. I owned and operated a business of my own for 16 years. And then I have been serving on the City Commission for the past 4 years. The priorities I see include the lack of affordable housing, transparency and responsiveness of city government, and long-term financial sustainability. We've had, I think, 4 or so candidate forums like this. I want to spend some time this afternoon talking about an item that really hasn't been covered on many of them, if any. And that is the long-term financial picture and emphasizing the need for strong oversight of city finances. Since I've been on the commission for the past 4 years, there's a few trends that are concerning. Not that we're going down a path that's going to lead us to bankruptcy or anything, but there are some trends that are concerning. And that truly should make it a priority for the next 4 years, and it will be if I'm reelected. In 2023, the commission was informed of an $8 million budget shortfall, which was partially covered by drawing down on cash reserves. Our cash reserves have decreased from $29 million to $16 million. The budget for last year and this year included some one-time revenue sources, which in the long run is not really good financial fiscal management, so that needs to be corrected. In addition, there are indications that infrastructure funding is falling short. The road conditions assessed by the engineering department have been just slowly declining over the years, and we actually this year had to set aside a whole project because we did not have sufficient funding for all of them. So hopefully we'll be able to talk about some solutions as we go forward this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you. And due to some technical issues, we're going to ask Al and Delson to do their opening again. So apologies for that. So Al Carlson.
You know, you never mind talking twice. But I am Al Carlson, and I have been a 54-year resident of the city. Like I said before, I've been a teacher, a realtor, a broker, and a contractor since 1980, as well as being a legislator and leader in the North Dakota House of Representatives. This is not what I view as a resume builder job. I think this is a job about creating good public policy. I'm glad to hear Arlette talk about the budget, because the budget is crucial. The city of Fargo is no different than anybody else. And in my opinion, they do not have a revenue problem, they have a spending problem. And it needs somebody with a strong hand on the budget and an understanding of the budget. They're complicated. You need to go agency by agency, line by line, and I'm used to doing that. So I would classify myself, they said, what are you? And everybody has a political philosophy. I believe in limited government and free enterprise, the rule of law. Those kind of things are important to me, to lower taxes and to not spend more than you have. And building a strong reserve is part of that. So I'm looking forward to the questions as well. This is home. And I want to be part of making sure that we properly guide Fargo into the future.
Thank you. Delson Santel.
Yeah, good afternoon once again. All right, good afternoon. Yeah, so once again, I was born in Haiti, and I've been in Fargo since 1994. Attended the local schools on the north side, went to Concordia. I currently own 2 barbershops and a barber school. Been doing that for 10 years, and coaching. I've been coaching at Concordia Moorhead for 10 years, at all levels for 10 years. And then I also am the Legacy board president for the Children's Foundation. Sorry. Sorry for me having to do this all over again. It's messed up my routine. But once again, my main core issues are workforce development, strategic growth, and public safety. And I'm asking for your support today because I believe that as a leader, you should be open to all perspectives, not similar perspectives but also different perspectives as well. So, and I also believe that a great leader, they find the middle ground. And if they're not able to find the middle ground, that they keep on moving forward and find a solution. So thank you.
Thank you for your opening comments. And so just a reminder, we'll now do a question and answer period. So we'll each do a question, or we'll do a question, and then you'll get 1 minute to answer, and we'll go on down the line. We'll start with John Strand, and then we'll move on down to Michelle and Arlette and back. So, Catherine.
All right, thank you. Our first question that we have for you this evening. Each of you have talked about some of the pressing issues that you each have. Would you talk about what the pressing issues are in Fargo today and outline your specific plans to address those issues if elected? We'll start with John Strand.
The pressing issues facing the city, everybody will say housing, and everybody will say workforce development, because they are pressing issues. They're pressing issues across the country. But I'm going to add to that a little more color to the local level. We have really significant society issues. We have some behavioral health issues, some mental health issues. We have some law enforcement challenges that these all intersect. You know, when we have people that are in our streets and in our neighborhoods that are struggling with addiction and battling it, and their families are trying to figure out what to do, you know, and our approach too often has been to let law enforcement arrest them out of their situation. That's not an answer. You know, we have some really compelling issues. I mentioned the opioid issue earlier on. We have a fentanyl issue right now that's gargantuan, and we need to talk about it. And it's across the boards in every family's, across the spectrum of families affected. So social issues, people issues, jobs issues, housing issues, childcare issues, they all tie together, but they're people issues.
Thank you. Michelle?
I think something that's very important, of course, for our growth is economic development, and boosting the economic growth of Fargo is essential for ensuring prosperity and opportunity for all residents. As a candidate for the Fargo City Commission, I believe in implementing policies and initiatives that foster a thriving business environment, attract investment, and create jobs. So some of my points for supporting the economic growth of Fargo include business-friendly policies, supporting local businesses, investing in infrastructure, diversification, sustainable growth, and collaboration and partnerships. By implementing these measures, we can create a vibrant and resilient economy that will benefit all residents of Fargo. And I believe as a member of the City Commission, I'd be committed to championing those policies that support economic growth, create opportunities, and enhance the quality of life for everyone.
Thank you. Arlette.
So I am going to talk a little bit about affordable housing. We just completed a housing study, and it showed that the missing middle is truly probably the biggest gap that we have right now. So it's the housing for individuals that are probably middle income, whether it's rental or owning. And MetroCog is in the process of setting up a regional committee which will look at strategies. But what I assume will happen here, we need to work with builders, developers, financial institutions, the other jurisdictions. We need to change our land development code to allow various kind of building types to provide housing for that missing middle. The second item that we need to follow through on is a housing rehab fund for the core neighborhood. That would provide some funding for individuals that live in the core neighborhoods with older housing.
Thank you. Al?
Yeah, it's really hard to settle on just one issue because there's always lots more than one. But if I had to list them, I'd put public safety at the top. I'd put taxes and special assessments and the rate at which they're growing as number 2. And I'd put housing of various types as the third one. But there are many more. Like the other people have said, there's many more. We need to really concentrate on our public safety in both our neighborhoods and our schools as well as downtown. Some of this is the downtown people are here. I've received information and I've received texts and some people and some pretty alarming things that they have brought forward. And we need to, as a commissioner, I think it's our responsibility to make sure that we have our hands around that issue and to dig into it and find out why these problems exist, whether it is just the drug situation or whatever else it happens to be, the homelessness issue. But you need to not have an action plan, you need to have action, and we need to straighten this out because there's some real problems down here.
Thank you. Delson?
Yeah, when I say workforce development, so we have a lot of college students that eventually leaves, and just because they're not able to find a good paying job here. So why don't we focus on paid internships? Why don't we give incentives towards those small businesses? We give a lot of incentives to bigger corporations, but let's focus more on the small businesses. New Americans, right? Immigrants. Well, let's when they come here, they're usually working the minimum paying jobs, but let's find a way, give them wraparound services and give them that opportunity for career advancement. Lastly, we can think outside the box. F5 Project, we had a meeting with them a couple months ago. How about that population coming out here? And my business partners, they're both felons, but since then they turned their life around and they've built 10 businesses since then, and just giving people that second chance. Lastly, as Al said, public safety. We need to work on that. Thank you.
Thank you. So Michelle, we'll start with you. I'm chair of the Fargo Planning Commission, so I love all of our neighborhoods in Fargo and the diverse situations that people choose to live in. But I love downtown above all of it, and downtown makes up 10% of our property tax base in the city. 1 out of 8 new housing starts since 2017 have come downtown. As we've seen this density of tax base located in the downtown area, what lessons can you learn as we grow to the south and to the north to make sure we're financially solvent, making sure we're getting enough revenue in as we're going out, but also how do you make sure that services from the city are equitably divided based on how much tax base is coming in?
Right. Well, I think first and foremost, it's important that we not focus just on downtown. It seems like that's been a real focus of the commission over the past several years. And we need to focus on Fargo as a whole and to include those other neighborhoods. again, our growth is primarily to the south because we're landlocked. We can't go to the east, we can't go to the west. The north is pretty limited as far as what we can do there. We definitely, I think law enforcement is one of my top priorities. And so we definitely need to have those infrastructures in place where all areas of the city have that representation. Downtown is definitely a wonderful spot in our city, but I think the focus needs to be on the wider city and not just focused on that one area.
Arlette?
The biggest lesson we can learn from downtown really is the tax base is so strong because of density. And that's one of the things that we are trying to build into the growth plan. It also leads to the financial sustainability long-term of the city in that the higher density, mixed use kind of development really provide a stronger tax base, even out in the greenfield. So that's one of the things that's being looked at with the revisions in the land development code, as you well know, Rocky. So I do think that downtown provides lessons to be learned there, as well as ongoing maintenance issues of infrastructure. And that's where I think as we grow, the more dense we are, the better the funding is for infrastructure as well. So those are the things I think we can learn from downtown.
Thank you. Al?
Why don't you repeat the question again, Rocky?
Yeah. So downtown makes up about $1 billion in property tax value right now, and they make up about 10% of the city's revenue from property tax. What lessons can be learned from that density of property tax as the city grows? And then also, how do you make sure that services are equitably divided as needed across different types of neighborhoods?
Well, obviously, there's been a boom downtown over the years, but I don't think downtown's for everybody. I don't think it's made, and don't think it's designed for families and children. If you look at the demographics of who's living here, this isn't good. There aren't many grade schools close by. So the town needs to grow and the town needs to sprawl, but the town also need to be able to assess its costs accordingly to the benefits received. You know, I just have to go back to this as long as I've got a few seconds. I received an email from a person that does business downtown. He said the decision downtown with open drug use, drug dealing, public intoxication, urinating and defecating, verbal harassment, street fighting is ruining what used to be a safe place to work and to live and to shop. There needs to be a change. There has to be less accommodations for the perpetrators and more protection for the people who invest and pay taxes in the business district. And this goes directly back to your question. They're paying the taxes, but is that going to continue if we don't make sure this is a safe place?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, there's been for majority of citizens in Fargo. I mean, the thing is, there's an increase of property taxes. So what it comes down to is we have to look at our budget. Going back to the needs and wants, yes, our budget is 75% of the city's salaries, but we got to look line by line and make sure that they understand, or we understand what's our needs and what's our wants. If not, then we're just we're not gonna fix this issue with property taxes. And once we figure that out, our needs and wants, we can lower property taxes and move on from there. Thank you.
Thank you. John?
That's a really loaded question. I do carry the downtown portfolio. So I try to be as close to this situation as I can. I also lived downtown for about 8 years, not long ago, looking over on Broadway. My business is downtown. When we moved to Fargo in 1997, downtown was not real pretty. We need to remember where we've been, and it was pretty dismal. So there's a pendulum that swings, and there's a success going on right now that I think we should be celebrating. Of course we have issues and challenges and people challenges. When you have people, you have challenges. But I wouldn't trade that for having no people again. That's for sure. Every city in the country has challenges and problems with the people and the addictions and the behaviors and homelessness. These are just realities that we get to show people how to address it. The last thing I'll say is I'd like to replicate the Renaissance Zone, the success there, which has really been present downtown, and replicate that into our core neighborhoods for housing neighborhoods at risk.
All right, this next question will begin with Arlette. A proposal to eliminate property taxes in North Dakota has been circulating. Can you discuss the potential impacts that this would have on Fargo and your stance on it?
I definitely do not support it, and mainly because of loss of local control. Basically, the state legislature would probably take control over our spending and actually funding kind of decisions. So, yeah, it's not good. Let me, if I can, use the rest of my time just talking a little bit more about downtown. I have lived downtown for 17 years. It is a safe neighborhood. Yes, there are incidents that happen, just as they happen in the rest of the city. I am out on the sidewalk. I rarely drive. That's what I love about downtown. It's very walkable. And I'm out all hours of the day and night and have never felt unsafe. That does not mean that there isn't safety concerns. And yes, we've been working hard with law enforcement to try to beef that up and to address those issues. So,
thank you. Al?
I think there's one issue that most of us are going to agree on, is that the last place that your property tax should be decided from is Bismarck. And they would be the largest board of directors in the state of North Dakota if they did that. And they would be determining who gets parceled out for money for whatever reasons. And if they thought your budget too big, and maybe it was, they could cut it back. I don't think that local control is completely overridden in this proposal, and I personally can't support it. I think we need to get our hands around making sure our spending is controlled at home. And again, Fargo, the city only has 19.2% of your tax bill. There's a lot of other players that we need to make sure are sitting at the same table with us, making sure if we're tightening our belt, they're doing the same thing. And that's what needs to be done, a collaboration on all those people that make up your property tax, not in Bismarck, but locally.
Thank you. Delson?
Yeah, I spoke about this a little bit with my last answer, but as far as limiting property taxes, that's no. And once again, if we do give to a state level, I mean, why would they focus only on Fargo? I mean, there's other cities in the state as well. So, and you also got to think about, if you do eliminate property taxes, 30% of that funding goes towards the schools. So if we do that, where is that funding going to come from? But you can also, one thing that we could do is we could go to the state level and see if they can fund the schools and then that way we have a little bit more to for our infrastructure. That's one other way. But no, I'm not for eliminating property taxes. And once again, it's going back to the budget, looking at our needs and wants line by line and figuring out what we need to do so we can save money and put more of that into infrastructure.
Thank you. John?
When I was on the school board, I observed another citizens' effort to eliminate property taxes. It became quite the discussion across the state. Realistically, sure, it sounds nice to get rid of taxes, but then what are you going to do? How are we going to fund for example, education right now is 52% is funded by property taxes. Do we have do we not want a stellar world-class public education system? And what are the consequences of pulling the funding system? I agree with Al. I don't want people from across the state directing our Fargo schools locally. So the other half of our property taxes, we have half for the schools, then we have the parks, the cities, and the counties, and a little bit of others that share the remainder. Not much really goes to the city. Probably one of the brightest things I've ever heard about property taxes, years ago when Denny Wallaker was running and J.J. Gordon was a young kid running for mayor, he said, I think we should thank the people who paid property taxes their whole life, and when they're seniors, give them a break. I'd still like to see us do something like that.
Thank you, John. Michelle?
I think it sounds like a wonderful idea, not having property taxes. Who wants to pay taxes? It'd be great not to have specials, but the money has to come from somewhere. And again, like the other members have said, we don't want to give that control to Bismarck and take it away from local control. So I think that's a terrible idea. we definitely need to go through the budget line by line, and we can't spend more than we're taking in. So I think that's the most important thing that we can take from this, is to really watch our spending.
Thank you. Al, we'll start with you on this one. As one of 5 on the city commission, you'll need to convince at least 2 others to vote with you in order to get something passed. Will you please detail how you build coalitions, sometimes with those that you've disagreed with on past issues, and come together to move things forward?
Well, I figured it's a lot easier. I had to have 48 people in the legislature agree with me. 2 more is not that difficult. But the point is, you have to have the facts, and you have to ask good questions. You have to have the players at the table. And when you bring a discussion forward, you have to have the facts. And you have to be convincing that those facts are accurate. And you tell your other fellow commissioners that this is how it will work. You have to have a solution for the problem as well. But you need to have the facts, and you need to be a good communicator. And I think I have all of those skills. But again, it's not always easy, because there's different philosophies of government. Some people think that the best solution to government is another program. Some people think the best solution is to have a private-public partnership or to have the private sector do it. So there's going to be some philosophical differences, but you need to be well-versed, you be able to explain your case and have the facts.
Delson?
Yeah, even though this is a nonpartisan race, I mean, most people tend to sway one way or another, but that's where, that's where we have to leave our ego at the door, because it doesn't matter if you're red or you're blue. I mean, most of us can agree we all like green. We do like saving our money and keeping our money back in our pockets. And that also comes down to a good leader as well. As a coach, I mean, you may have a group of guys that want to go left, may have another group of guys that want to go right, but it's up to you as a leader to find that middle ground. And if you can't find that middle ground, then you have to move forward and take a step. And if you do make the wrong decision, you own up to it, and then you just keep on moving forward. And that's all I've been doing as a coach, is just finding solutions and moving forward. But you have to take that step and not let it be a standstill. Thank you.
John?
This question touches on the reality that when you have a board or a commission of 5 members, you can only talk to one other person. And then you're creating a quorum if you go beyond that realm. So, there's some realistic challenges with that. That said, everywhere we look right now, there's a fight. There's a fight in everybody's eyes. My mom would say, we're not going to fight at the dinner table. That's how I'd like to see at City Hall. We're not going to fight at City Hall. One of the things I've taken in my role is to mediate. When we see a fight, I mediate. When I already mentioned the Diversion Authority, we had a fight with the upstream opposition to the Diversion Authority. I led that effort to resolve that fight, to get it behind us so we could have a project going forward. We had a real challenge with our relationship with the Airport Authority at a while. I stepped in and mediated. That's what we do when we're not on the same page. We get together and find a coalition and work together. So we as commissioners are bridges to the people in our portfolios, not always just to each other.
Michelle?
I think it comes down to communication, leadership, and civility. We're all adults, and hopefully have the ability to communicate with each other and be civil. And then also in this position, we're leaders. So those are 3 things that I think come into play. Along that lines of being able to have communications and discussion, I will say, Arlette, I disagree with you about downtown. It doesn't feel as safe anymore. And I know from watching the news, walking in my neighborhood, I don't have the fear of getting punched in the face when I'm downtown. We've had so many different instances of violence, assaults, that really needs to be approached with our law enforcement. And I think that definitely needs to be one of the issues that as a commission we come together and discuss.
Arlette?
Yeah, so John had already indicated the challenge with building coalitions in a 5-member commission is the open meeting law. So it's difficult. So, I think the best way to deal with this is building trust relationships with the other members. And you do that through having integrity, being honest, and, having decorum that is receptive and open to discussions at the table. So bringing issues to the table, the public table, is the way some of that coalition building can happen. It's also a place and a time for disagreements on particular issues, and there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, I think everybody is looking for diversity of opinion up here. So, I think all of that leads to an effective commission.
Right, for our next question, we're going to transition to public safety, and we'll start with Delson on this one. If you were to grade public safety in the community right now, what grade would you give it from an A to F? And it's a critical function of city government. So what do you believe is the largest challenge facing Fargo's law enforcement today, and how would you aim to support the department?
A C+. I'll give it a C+ for a grade. And, I attended the Fargo Police Academy back in May of 2017, so I'm all for supporting law enforcement, giving them more resources. And when it comes down to public safety, what I believe is going on is that we have a lot of people that has these mental health issues, and they're not being addressed. They're not properly getting the resources they need. And what's happening is that they keep on going back into jails and becomes a revolving door. They're back on the streets, and then over and over again. So we need to work closely with the law enforcement, make sure that they're safe, make sure that the people that has these mental health issues, they get those resources. And going back, actually, the Milwaukee consultant that came here a couple months ago, why don't we focus on getting them housing first, and then that way those resources would be met, and then I believe that's how we keep a safer city. Thank you.
John.
Catherine, could you please repeat the question?
Yes. This next question is on public safety. How would you grade the safety of our community right now from A to F? And public safety is a critical function of city government. What do you believe is the greatest challenge facing Fargo's law enforcement, and how would you support the department?
Well, this is at the heart of everything we do, and I'm going to grade our public safety as an A- or a B+. All right. Last July 14th, when we had an incident with a shooting in town, and one officer killed, and 2 other officers shot, I was sitting at the table at the dais and wondering, well, what's my role in all this? And we talked public safety and we talked needs. I went back to the table and advocated for increasing our mills, believe it or not, increasing our mills to support and fund public safety. At that point, our budget called for 2 officers, and they needed 13. And in one day last July, we were down 3. Plus, we also needed 15 firemen for our new fire station 8, and we have our harm reduction program. We have immense public safety needs. So we have to fund these public safety needs, and we have to support the police, and we have to, in my mind, support the social service arena of folks that take care of the people that aren't in the skill set of our law enforcement to deal with.
Michelle.
I think first and foremost, we need to support our officers, firefighters, and EMTs. All of those public servants together as much as possible, and they need to be a priority when we're putting these budgets together. We also need to stop handcuffing our law enforcement and leadership and overburdening them with unnecessary, unqualified, and ineffective oversight boards, and instead let them do their job. And we still need to hold them accountable. I've had numerous people reach out to me about the lack of what they perceive as law enforcement, having to hire their own private security. Again, as I just mentioned about downtown, I think that's definitely has seen an increase in crime, and we need to support those officers so they can have what they need to do their jobs.
Arlette.
So law enforcement is definitely an extremely important part of the public feeling safe, for sure. I think the first thing law enforcement will tell you is their major challenge is mental health and chemical dependency issues. So they are not prepared either, with training or education or their ability to deal with that. So the harm reduction division within the public health department is a very important part of public safety. as well as just the sense of safety in neighborhoods. So, I think long run, we have to work with the state legislature to make sure those resources are available for individuals with mental health and chemical dependency issues. We cannot arrest our way out of this. We've got to deal with the core issue.
Al?
Well, I think we must always know that the law enforcement must know that they have 100% of our support. So if you're being critical of something that happens, it's not the guy that's out wearing the blue and walking the streets. It's there's something amiss if they're not allowed to fulfill their duties that they're given, whether they're being released or they're told not to arrest a certain type. That all goes back to, and without any of us having the portfolio and being able to look at it, it's pretty hard to say that there's a real flaw there. But we have lots of laws on the books. We need to enforce the one they have, and we need to be fully supportive of our law enforcement people. We also need to, budgets are priorities. So you have to, if you believe that we need, and I see they just hired 12 new officers, that's a great thing. But the first thing I want to do is I want to get in a squad car and ride around at night and see what's going on around our city. I don't think you understand until you've been there. I've done that before with the Highway Patrol. It's the most valuable lesson I learned about public safety is what those people go through. And they need 100% of our support.
Thank you. Yeah. John, we'll start with you on this one. I'm going to ask it's kind of a two-part question, but one, we have an increasing number of those struggling with homelessness in our community. So the two questions on there, what is your solution to reducing the number facing homelessness in our community? And second, what do you do to address the perceived issues that go along with homelessness? As we've talked about public safety, I think there's generally a negative perception that comes along with it. And I'll invite each of you to downtown because if you're not aware, the busiest park in the city is Broadway Square. And you'll see families eating ice cream any time of day. All weekend, there was a minimum 60 people there, all last weekend. You'll never find another park in the city that's that size with that many people and families having a good time. So I urge you to come down. Downtown is an amazing place, so I'll just defend that. But the nice thing about downtown is it has an identity. When you have crime in South Fargo, they say South Fargo. South Fargo is a huge place. But to go back to my question on homelessness, what would you do to reduce homelessness? And then what would you do to reduce the perception or enhance the perception of Fargo?
First thing I think of when I think of homelessness is one time years ago, I took my mom to New York City and she saw homeless people and she'd absolutely break down and weep. Couldn't believe that there were homeless people and how do they exist, We have to have that much heart about this. These are people's families. These are children and sons and daughters and brothers and sisters, aunts and uncles of families. One time when I got here in 1997, there was a person from my hometown of Crystal, North Dakota, sleeping on the streets. Somebody I grew up with. I go, oh my goodness, I couldn't believe that was even possible. So what do? First, we have a heart. Then we roll out the solutions and we get housing for people. We help them get food. We help them get jobs. 1997, there were lots of homeless people downtown, but there wasn't a whole population of other people to blend it in. So, and there's homeless people everywhere. So my sense is we get back to the basics and get housing, get people into security, get them structured, take care of each other, watch for people struggling, how to get them help.
Thank you. Michelle?
Homelessness, of course, is often a symptom of other underlying issues such as substance abuse, chemical dependency, alcoholism, a lack of housing. To truly address homelessness, we need to provide programs and services that have measurable benchmarks for their effectiveness. We also need to listen to and support our residents and businesses that are affected by the homeless issue that primarily take place in the downtown area. This will take a continued commitment by supporting our law enforcement and the first responders as they address the issue.
Arlette?
So we did bring in an expert from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and he laid out a pretty clear path forward. Two major tenets of that is in regards to the housing first philosophy, which is trying to get people, and we're talking about chronically unhoused here. There's a larger homelessness issue with a larger homeless population, but what I'm talking about are the chronically unhoused. And first of all, you have to free up housing inventory for these individuals. They have difficulty finding housing. So the Milwaukee model used a master lease program. That's something we can do. Secondly, you wrap case management around them so that they are successful when they get placed in a unit. And again, it's something that we're already doing to a certain degree. It just needs to be augmented. And it's something that the business community and the entire community was quite enthused about. So we just need to move forward with it.
Thank you. Al?
You know, that, like they said, the homeless and the poor will always be with us. It's a difficult situation, but the purpose that the government has in this is to try and find a way to bring those people from no home to where they have a productive job and they have the opportunity to take care of themselves. So we need temporary housing, but it's just the word temporary is important. But I go back to public-private partnerships, because I called Pat Traynor from Dakota Medical, and I said, how much money was raised in Giving Hearts Day? $29.3 million, of which many of those organizations are involved in the very issues we're talking about, of feeding the poor, of dealing with mental health issues, of providing shelter for families where they have no other place to go, or for teenagers who've been kicked out of their house. Those are the programs that we as a city need to saddle up with, and we need to work with them and work with all these benefactors with our city who have those issues in mind, and we'll help solve that problem.
Thank you. Delson?
I mentioned this before, and just going back to the Housing First initiative, you know, we're given this blueprint, and here's what I was talking about the last candidate forum too, is there's no action. We can talk about this all day, but once again, if there's no execution, what are we doing? We're given a blueprint. The only way we'll know if it works is if we have to try. And one thing about that too, given Housing First, that's great too, but I was actually speaking to a gentleman about this the other day is, yes, we can give them a house and give them wraparound services, but let's take it a step further. Let's do social capital philanthropy. What I mean by that is let's put them around people, so that way around good people. It's like going to jail for drugs and then going back and hanging out with the exact same people that you did drugs with. That's not going to get you anywhere. So what I mean by social capital is let's with that wraparound services, let's put them around good people, and then that I believe that will increase their likelihood of not reoffending again and staying off the streets, and that's it. Thank you.
All right, a reminder to our audience, if you'd like to submit any questions, you can at chamberquestions.com. All right, our next question, we'll start with Michelle. Got to find it here. Here we go. Be remiss if we didn't talk about workforce with the business community here. What specific actions should the City Commission take to address workforce shortages and challenges in the community? Michelle, we'll start with you.
Well, I think a skilled workforce is essential for attracting businesses and driving economic growth. So some of the things that we need to do to accomplish that are supporting the blue-collar industries that pay high wages. We don't need more social media influencers. We need more plumbers and electricians. So I think that's a very important aspect of society to be paying higher wages to. Continue to invest in and support tech. That's the fastest growing job segment by partnering with local schools, colleges, and vocational institutions to provide relevant training and certification programs. And also continue our efforts to retain our college graduates by fostering an environment and affordable that has resources that are looking for such things as affordable housing, activities and parks, and places where families can grow and live and feel safe, and use those resources to keeping families here.
Arlette?
So the city has accountability for a number of different issues that would help to attract and retain a workforce. Affordable housing, which I addressed some of the strategies a little bit earlier. Safe neighborhoods, which relates to certainly public safety issues. Inclusivity, making sure that we are a community that's a welcoming community to anybody and everybody who wants to work here and live here. And then amenities, in mixed-use developments, making sure there's coffee shops, places for people to gather, parks, whatever. So those amenities are an important part, I think, of the decision-making when somebody is trying to decide what community to reside in, live, work, and play in. Finally, I think one of the issues, childcare, is more of a state issue, but we need to advocate for childcare being affordable.
Al?
Well, I think you need to understand that this is you have to decide what is the role of the city government. Is the city government's role to train people, to make sure that there's a job within their community? Or is it a partnership agreement between the state, the county, the city, and our higher education system? I've long had a bone to pick with higher education system because the one job that they have to do is to train a workforce. And if they're doing their job, they become a very big player in this. Internships are a great way to help train your workforce and fill the shortage. Because the statistics prove that if you intern with somebody, you probably stay there and work for them. I can show you engineering firms that have had very great success doing those things. So there's programs that can be worked, and it takes a partnership between all the entities, the county, the city, the state, but we don't stand alone on workforce. It's not, first of all, it's not the major responsibility of the city, but it is the responsibility of us. We can't change the weather, but our regulations can change the business climate to make it successful.
Delson?
It seems like I've just been touching up on a lot of things earlier today, but going back to paid internships, right? Finding a way to keeping our college students here, and let's take a step further. Let's work closely with colleges. I mean, what we can do, we can step in and facilitate, and sit down with these colleges and figure out what majors do we need within the city. And that way we give the students, hey, these are the top majors in here, and if you want to be successful in the city, then you'll study one of these majors. So just working closely with the colleges. Once again, thinking outside the box, using people that are just coming or recently incarcerated, new Americans, immigrants. Let's find a way and really help those out, especially with those new Americans. They're usually working those minimum paying jobs. Let's find a way for career advancement. This can be trades. This can be, and let's focus more on the trades too. I mean, it's, as a barber, it only takes 1,500 hours to become a licensed barber. So just other ways. Thank you.
John?
Workforce is everything. It's all parts of life. Some years ago, I found out that we had people who were sharing bus passes to get to Agassiz School to learn English. And so I went to Transit and worked with some folks. We got some more bus passes for more people to learn English. How hard was that? Another point, we found out that people were having trouble getting to the industrial park. So I work with Transit. It's my portfolio. And Commissioner Pepcorn and I got Transit out to the industrial park. That's not the end of this is the basic things you do. When I was brand new to the commission and looking at our incentives for pilots and new business developments, we have these different criteria we measure for giving points for incentives. And one of them, with regard to salaries, we were starting to measure wages at $7 an hour. 7 to 9, 9 to 11, and 11 to 13. And go, well, they said, what do you want? I said, we start at a minimum living wage. So we raised it to $15 an hour. If you're going to come and get incentives, you should be paying something more than minimum wage. But this is established in policy now. So these, and last thing I'll say is I'd take a magic wand, turn the Civic Center into a child care mecca.
Okay, Arlette, we'll start with you on this one. So, I think we've talked a lot about how city commissioners have to make tough decisions, and the nice part is after you made those, you get to promote them. And so looking at Fargo, who's currently constructing a $3 billion flood protection project and a $1.4 billion water supply project, it's making Fargo one of the most resilient cities in the country, probably, if not the world, making those commitments. I guess knowing that those are going into place, how do you as a city commissioner go out and advocate for Fargo, and how do you leverage those decisions that have been made to promote Fargo as a destination of choice for businesses, residents, and tourists?
Yeah, you're right. It does make us very resilient in the light of having too much water and not enough. So It really provides a foundation for business growth by all means, as well as residential growth. I do think that as we move forward with diversion completion, hopefully housing prices will start to come down, although land prices will start to go up. And so it's going to be a balancing act, I think, as we build out to the diversion. I'm going to bring in that long-term kind of long-range planning issue with a diversion. We will only have about 40 to 50 years worth of growth before we hit the diversion, and we have to do that wisely. So again, we mentioned increased density as well as mixed-use developments in that area will be terrifically important.
Thank you. Al?
State the question again, please.
How do you leverage the investments made by the city of Fargo to build a $3 billion flood protection project and a $1.4 billion water supply project so that Fargo can use it to promote itself to businesses and residents and tourists and alike?
Like I said before, you can't change the weather in Fargo, North Dakota, but you can change the business climate. The city of Fargo has many regulations that can be encouraging to business or discouraging to business, to encouraging to families or discouraging in families. And that responsibility lies on the city to make those that are fair but not burdensome, so that when we go out to sell our city, we say, this is what we have. We have a vibrant park system. We have walkways. We have schools that are second to none. That's how we sell our city. And our public safety, even though I believe that needs to be fixed a little bit, is still one of the things that people ask about if they're going to come here with their families. And do we have a competitive housing market is crucial. And I'm sure you've all heard that. If you don't have affordable housing, and that means a lot different for different professions as to what affordable is. But if you don't have those, you don't have you can't sell the product if you don't have it. And with the diversion, with the water supply, I think that we have the ingredients to be very successful in the future.
Delson?
When you think about moving to a new place, I mean, as Al said, you think about a few things. This could be a family and this could be a business as well, but you're looking at public safety. Are there good schools? Is it clean? Is it safe, right? That's a big thing. And one thing that we need to continue looking at is our budget, right? Just making sure that our property taxes stay low, predictable, sustainable, and that way we're able to attract more people here, and that way we're not a lot of families are not burdened with high property taxes. So once again, just going back and making sure that public safety is number one. We're keeping it clean, safe, and good schools. Thank you.
Thank you. John?
In 1997, in April, when we were facing an ice storm and a valley-wide flood, that's when I moved here. and my newspaper was from Grand Forks, and the town was burning and flooding. And we get to Fargo, we're just millimeters from saving our city. Then in 2009, we had a repeat. We were really close to losing our downtown. So I fought to get flood protection and to get it in place so that we are not at risk for the future of having protection for floods. I celebrate having water as well. My whole life we've been needing this issue of water from the garrison brought to the eastern side. So all that said, we're ready for major growth. This is the economic engine of the region. And with flood protection, with water, with our workforce, with our public education, with our community values, boy, we can have so much fun going forward and celebrate in ways that people will look at Fargo and go, look at that city and what they're doing. And we're ready.
Thank you. Michelle?
We have a wonderful city that we have the pleasure to live in. We have great universities and colleges, schools. We have great businesses in this city, Microsoft. I think it's a very attractive place for people to live and a wonderful place for families to grow. So all those things that our past leadership has done over the years has really built a solid foundation for families to live here. So I think it's a wonderful place to live, and we just continue to expound on that and continue to develop our city.
All right, I just got a message getting asked to again restate where you can send your questions. So chamberquestions.com is the website that you can use to submit any questions. The next question, we will start with Al. This question is, with the state legislative session right around the corner, what issues do you believe should be on the City of Fargo or the overall community's policy agenda?
Well, there's always so many when they get into session, but from a city standpoint, you always need to know what you're going to receive from all the revenue sharing that we do for the highways, for the roads. We've got some issues on 64th Avenue we got to make sure we take care of, but that would be one of them. We have a nice overpass and no ramps to it. So those are one of the things, but it's that funding continues on the aid is an important thing, that we know where our projects will be funded from the highway fund. The sales tax distribution, how much more money we're going to get or how much less as we build our budget. But the legislature also needs to understand that if we have priorities, if we think that there needs to be some additional grants for law enforcement or something, if you don't bring the proposal, you get nothing. But we need to be ready to ask. And it's hard because there's so many things, but making sure that the proper funding that normally comes to the city still comes is very important.
Delson.
Yeah, with property taxes being a burden to many families, as I said before, we could, with property taxes, a lot of that comes from school funding. So we can go to the state and we can ask them to help fund our schools. And then that way we get more money back and we can fix our infrastructure. So that's what I would do. Thank you.
John.
You know, it's not unusual for a group of people to become a little more what they might call purple. You know, we are probably one of the more bluer parts of the state, but we're in a red state. So we have this tug of war constantly of how to relate to each other and understand each other and get along with each other. And then at times we're pitted against each other. I remember one of our meetings, we're talking legislative issues, and I asked our consultant, I said, help me understand what this relationship with us and them is about. And they said, you got to understand, they're from all those little towns out there. I think, well, that's us. We're from all those little towns out there. We're not enemies at all. We need to learn to get along with each other, remember where we're all from, and that we're partners, and that our success is their success. So in that context, one of the big topics is local control. Another topic is preemption. There's times where they preempt us from doing things, and we need to remember cities have their own authority. Let them decide their own fate in the future, and we've empowered them to do that. Let's trust them with their decisions.
Michelle.
We need to have a very well-versed knowledge of our budget and what we need so we can balance our wants and needs when working with the state. I think that's very important, that we know what it is that we have in our budget and what we need to ask for. So that communication is very important.
Arlette.
So there's two main issues, I think, and there's going to be a lot more, but two that I can think of up front. One is a housing type of Renaissance zone that was actually proposed probably, 6-8 years ago probably, and turned down by the state legislature. It's basically an incentive program for housing that's starting to go over the edge probably in regards to keeping them redeveloped and livable. So having a Renaissance zone type of program for housing, single family housing. And then the second thing is law enforcement struggles with enforcing certain laws in the city. Cameras can't be used. We have speeding ticket fine limits. There are a couple of others issues that need to be addressed so law enforcement can actually do what they need to do.
Great. So we're going to start with Delson on this one. We're going to try to see if I can get a quick answer on, because we've heard a lot about balancing the budget or tightening wants and needs and those sort of things. And the truth is, when you have 5 commissioners, you probably each have a different opinion on what that is. So I'd like to hear from each of you, what's one program you'd increase funding on and what's one program you'd decrease funding on?
So when you say funding, can be a department or it can be?
Yeah, up to you.
Yeah, so I would just increase more funding for our law enforcement. And, these are quick answers, right?
But
Yeah, okay.
You get your minute, but yeah,
Okay.
what would you decrease funding on? You've talked about wants and needs and balancing it. What would you decrease funding on?
Yeah, so I recently had a meeting with our DEI program. I believe DEI is good in theory, but that's one area that would actually decrease. We can probably, once again, I just don't think that DEI is really affecting, or it's effectively, in a good way, our city, just because I believe there's just way more. It's hard to measure. It's hard to measure DEI, and that's the reason why I would decrease it. Thank you.
John?
Well, when we went through our last budget cycle, I already breathed life into this notion of we need to fund public safety and invest more in that. And we raised the millage 2 bills to fund public safety better. I believe the community is demanding this of us with the issues of street racing and crime and all those things out there. If I was to, so I'd increase funding in public safety, and that includes harm reduction in firemen, law enforcement firemen, and harm reduction. I would decrease funding in consultants. We have a lot of consultants. We spend millions of dollars on consultants sometimes. And there's this mindset that the public doesn't want you to grow your employee base. You can't add to your FTEs, your full-time equivalents. Well, I'd rather have employees that are part of our work culture than have consultants from New York City or wherever that come and go and charge us an arm and a leg. So that I would trim down our consultants and invest more in our actual work.
Thank you. Michelle?
I think one department I would want to allot more money for would be law enforcement and public safety. I think that's something that the public is seeing that they want and, as you said, John, demand. I agree with you, Delson, with DEI. I just don't think that it has the benchmarks to show what it's accomplishing for the amount of money that we're paying. So those would be my 2 categories.
Thanks. Arlette?
So I would increase funding on the housing side. In housing programs and helping people keep their homes up, that kind of activity. Where I would cut, and I agree with John, we use a lot of consultants. It would be one thing if we use the consultants to help us figure out strategies and then actually implemented those strategies. But so oftentimes then we don't follow up with them as well as we should. So I would scrutinize and decrease probably the consultant fees.
Al?
Well, I'm not going to give you either answer because I haven't delved into every line of the budget. And it's easy to say, and I'm, for one, would probably be one increasing more money into law enforcement and public safety. But first of all, I need to know what all they're using their money on today and if there's things in that budget that should be reallocated before I would say, let's go spend a lot more. As far as cutting something, I'd always look for duplications. What are we doing that some other county, the city, the park board is doing? And how can I eliminate duplication and save costs? But until I could go line by line, department by department, I couldn't tell you. I don't disagree with their thoughts on the DEI and some of those things. But again, I haven't, and I don't think unless the 2 people that are incumbents are the only 2 that have actually reviewed that budget. And I didn't see many reductions. I just saw increases. In fact, I see the excise tax went up on everybody's utility bills a couple % to balance the budget. So those kind of things need to be addressed, and it'd be line by line.
Thank you. The next question, we're going to start with John from one of our audience members. Why are you a good candidate for Fargo City Commission?
In my mind, an elected official should be a bridge to the people they serve, and listen and learn and pay attention to what their needs and wants are. Learn, have your finger on the pulse of what's going on in their lives and in their streets and their neighborhoods. They're part of town, their whole world. So I just really think that's the core of being a good elected official, is listening and learning from the people and breathing life into their dreams, not my dreams. This isn't about me. It's about the people. and it's about what they want and the community they live in and what they're aspiring to do and be. So I think I have aspects of that skill set, to deliver ongoing. I try my best to pay attention to the people and learn what I don't know, because there's a lot we don't know all the time. But that's a good leader in my mind, is just to be there with the people and understand them and have the heart to know what they're going through.
Michelle.
My background is in communication. I have a degree in that, and I spent many years in the local media communicating with the public, getting to know city government and the goings-on in the city. And I think just being a citizen that chooses to step up and help serve makes me a good candidate. I'm just doing it because I love the city and I want to see it continue to improve and work on things that we should. So that's why I think I'd be a good candidate.
Arlette.
So serving on the city commission, it takes a little while for someone to get a good feel for the variety of services. So coming with experience is a good thing, which I certainly have that. I do think that the philosophy of the individual sitting in this seat is important. So my philosophy is truly that I am in this seat to provide conduit between the community and the city bureaucracy. So it's important for an individual to be connected to the community and bring that into the city structure in building priorities, in funding questions and decisions, as well as staffing and other kinds of issues. So I bring that.
Al.
We all, of course, think we have special skills to be a city commissioner, but you really have to be lots of things to lots of people. You have to be a good listener. God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth, and he would like to have us use it in that proportion. You need to be a good communicator, as was brought up. You need to be a big picture guy. You need to be able to see other than just a narrow focus of what you're working on. You need to be able to disagree without being disagreeable. That's really important. And you have to be willing to ask the hard questions, even when some people don't want to answer them. And most of all, you must have a philosophy about government. You must believe in your heart that you're doing the best and creating good public policy for the people, and that you are listening to what they have to say, and that you are not expanding their taxes and you're not expanding their rules and regulations, but that you're going to be a good public servant of their tax dollars.
Delson.
When I think of all the great mentors and leaders I've had in my life, I think of people that were open, right? Open to different perspectives. I also think of people that made difficult decisions when there were 2 opposing sides. How do you find that middle ground, or how do you move forward and take action? Once again, you have to take action. We have all these great plans. We've been talking about special assessments for so long. We talked about property taxes for so long. But at what point are we going to finally take action? And I believe that's where I excel at, is taking action. Thank you.
Michelle, we'll start with you on this one. I think anybody will tell you that the coolest part about any body of government is that 95% of the time they're unanimous votes or higher. And so it's really, we focus a lot on disagreements. But looking out in our audience, I see Charlie Johnson from the CDB, and when you go out and you sell the community together, I think that's powerful. And so I guess my question to each of you is, why Fargo?
Why not? I love Fargo. I think it's a great place to live. We have, in my opinion, everything, for instance, like the Twin Cities would have, but on a smaller level without the crime, as much as it is down there. So we have entertainment, we have restaurants, we have jobs, we have businesses, schools, universities. It's just a great place to live, and I think a wonderful place to raise a family, and I would just like to continue being a part of that.
Arlette?
It's a great place to live, work, and play. And what Michelle was saying is the amenities that we have here certainly are on par with a lot of larger communities, but we still have that small neighborhood feel and that small town feel. I am always amazed at how many people know someone that I know and the connections that could be made in almost any conversation that you strike up with someone. So it's got that small town feel, but it also has that larger town amenity benefit.
Al?
Every place you go, at least I go, and I've been involved in some national organizations, they say, how about that movie Fargo? And I look at them and say, quite honestly, I've never seen it, but I said, I don't think that's really like our Fargo. But if they do ask about how about those bison, I tell them, man, we're many-time champions, and this is a great place. We have great colleges. We have safe communities. Every community has issues, but we are kind of the shining star, city on the hill, like Reagan would say. We have the cross-section of interstates. We have major airport and international flights, and it is the place, if you're going to be somewhere, in my opinion, in North Dakota, this is where you want to be. And we can sell those amenities. We have jobs. I wish we had more people to fill them sometimes, but we have jobs and we have good schools. And if we sell those kind of things, people will come. You know, they hear about the winters, and once they live there, it's amazing how some of them have a different opinion about it, especially this last one. That was the year to sell Fargo, by the way.
Thank you. Delson, why Fargo?
When you think of joining a group, this can be a new gym, whatever it might be, you're looking for, do you feel welcome? Does it have that community feeling? And one thing, I was actually back in high school for the 09 flooding, and I just remember looking, and everyone's contributing, making sandbags. I was there eating food, but for the most part, it's that community feeling, right? That everyone feels welcome. And I think that's the reason why a lot of people should be here in Fargo. Thank you.
Thank you. John?
You know, I never did understand why I was born where I was born, except I was. And a lot of us, we like to go back to our roots. We like to deal with the familiar. We're comfortable in spaces that we know already, you know, and so we have so much going on for us here. We have really good people, and we have great opportunity, and we have relatively open minds. You know, I wouldn't trade places for a lot of the world. When I've gone out and moved once I moved away and I came back home, and back here I can say, hey, where are you from? And pretty soon you have a conversation, you find somebody in common. You know, we're just so wealthy here. And we are, Arlette mentioned, we're kind of like a big small town. You know, that notion of taking care of each other. So, you know, I just can't imagine being in a lot of the other parts of the world. There's 8+ billion people out there right now. I like Fargo. I like North Dakota.
All right, a few more questions here for you all. This next one, we'll start with Arlette. Voter turnout has recently been less than 25%. What are you doing to increase civic engagement? And that could be from voting in this election cycle, running for office, et cetera.
Yeah, so in fact, I think the last primary election, which is the election where city commission is actually elected, was closer to 7% of eligible voters. So it's terrible. I mean, it's really unfortunate. So, you know, I think a large issue probably is that individuals forget about voting. And I have worked hard to try to make that voting process easier and more accessible. So a couple years ago, we, as a city, sent out absentee ballot applications to try to encourage people to vote absentee, which is a really easy way to vote. I would certainly like to try that again. It wasn't as successful as we had hoped it would be, but I think we need to try it again.
Al?
You know, that's your only voice for most people in democracy, and a representative republic is to go to the voting poll. Now, it always has historically across the state, not only in Fargo, been very low in the primaries. And we need to encourage people to vote. I think we've made our voting laws to the point where There's an early voting period. There's absentee ballots. There is election day sites. You can drop your ballot off even if at the courthouse on election day, your absentee ballot. So I think we've made it about as easy as it can be and still kept it secure, because it's still one person, one vote rule in this country. And we need to make sure it stays that way. But we need to get out. Everybody I talk to, tell them, remind them to vote. Vote on June 11th. A lot of them say, is there an election? You know, and that's an honest answer, because unless they're engaged with some political party, and right now I think we're going to have a higher turnout because of all the contested races for Congress, the contested race for governor. But in most primaries, we need more voters, and we need to be selling it as a city. I'm not sure sending out ballots is right, but the city public service ads reminding people to vote would be a great thing.
Delson.
Now, as Al mentioned, and you know, it's I believe we're doing a lot. I mean, absentee voting, you have early voting. But what it comes down to, I think a lot of people get confused too, because I think a lot of them, they think that the elections happen during the generals. So maybe that's, but what you guys are doing right now, you guys are hosting candidate forums and you guys are posting this on your website. And I believe if we can get more involvement from the community and just more awareness, that's what it comes down to. But yeah, and once again, just spread the word. Thank you.
John.
You know, I'm a newspaper guy. I've mentioned this, and I've probably written 1,000 editorials in my life. More recently, I wrote an editorial called "Be the Vote That Mattered." Show up. Be who you are. Stand for your values. Get to the ballot box, close the curtain, and voice your views. Whoever you are, whatever you are all about. That's America. If you don't go to the polls, well, what you get is not there. You know, so that be the vote that mattered. Last thing I'll say is, I will never participate in tearing down the institution of elections. That's what we're here to, get elected. I will not turn around tomorrow and go, that was a fraudulent election, that wasn't fair. We have to honor the institution in American democracy that we are and stand for the principles that we reflect. You know, and if we can't honor elections, we should evaluate the words we're saying. And if people around us can't honor elections, we should ask, who are you representing? So I'll honor elections and I'll honor the vote of the people.
Michelle.
I grew up with the notion that other people died for our right to vote, and that if you don't take advantage of that opportunity, you really have no right in complaining about anything that's going on, because you have that right to vote and to speak your voice. And I've always voted in every election since I was 18, and I just feel honored to be able to do it. In my own way, I make sure I encourage friends to go out and vote and just spread the word and make sure that people know that I voted. So that's how I would handle that.
Thank you. We're now going to move to some rapid response, a couple questions before we do the closing remarks. So Rocky.
Yeah, speaking of getting people to vote, so for the low attention span voters, 2 words. What's your headline? 2-word headline on Al.
Common sense.
Delson.
Vote now.
Say that again.
What's the 2-word headline for John Strand?
Oh, my bad. I understood the question wrong. I thought you worded it differently.
Delson, you can have a new headline. That's all right. Yeah.
So once again, this headline can be
About you, about your campaign.
2 words.
let's fight.
More heart.
Law enforcement.
Transparent and responsible.
All right. Next one is, how would you grade the city in the past few years? A, B, C, D, F, and then few words of why. Delson.
A B. I mean, we can always work and improve the city.
John.
A, we're a great city and we have lots of work to do, but we really work well together when we choose to, and it's the proof's in the pudding. We have a great city and great people.
Michelle.
Above average, I would say B. We have a vibrant city, and I think that's reflected in many parts of who we are.
Arlette.
A, because we've got a really good structure.
Al.
Need some work. No grade.
Would have loved your class at Agassiz, I think. So that was good. So we're going to move on to a final comments. You each have a minute. We're going to start with John just to continue in order here, and we'll go around to each of you. And again, just if we don't get a chance, thank you all for putting your name out there. It means a lot to all of us that I pay attention. So.
Thank you for putting this on and bridging us to the people out there. You know, it's important we all get to know each other and understand each other. I'm in my final effort. This would be my final third term, you know, on the city. And I'm reminded of when I began one of my careers years ago. A mentor told me, "You crawl, you walk, and then you run." You know, and at first you're on all fours and you're just groveling and learning. Eventually you stand vertical and you see something differently, and pretty soon you start moving along. I'm entering into that moment where if I get the opportunity to serve the people more going forward, I'm going to run. I have experience to make quick, effective decisions, and I've got an outreach of people out there that I can get results quickly. That's when you're running in life, when you can really make a change quickly with a broad support of people around you. Last thing is, I'll apologize for my red face today. I've had some medical treatments today, and even though not today, but recently, so I'm here. Even though I'm all red faced, I'm here and 100% participating.
Michelle.
I would just want to close by saying thank you, and I'd like to return common sense to the City Commission, that the Fargo City Commission needs to focus on issues that affect all of our residents, such as jobs, housing, workforce, homelessness, and rising crime. It's time to elect someone who will be responsive and accountable to all of Fargo. I believe that I'm that person, and I would appreciate your vote on June 11th. For anyone wishing to learn more about my campaign, you can visit turnbergforfargo.com or search Michelle Turnberg on social media. Thank you.
Thank you. Arlette?
So I've truly enjoyed serving this last 4 years on the commission. I've provided leadership for a number of initiatives. They need to be brought to completion and implementation. There's plans to be implemented, priorities to be determined, and funding to be determined. We started with a budgeting process that was pretty closed even to the rest of the city commission. The finance committee was totally closed to the rest of the city commission as well as the public. That has become more open. I come with an interest and skills in understanding financial statements and budgets, working with large staffs, and I would love to continue on with all of that. So I would certainly appreciate your vote, and I want to thank DCP and the chamber as well as other hosts for hosting this. Thank you.
Thank you. Al?
Well, thank you for hosting this, number one. It's always good to get your opinion out, and I enjoy more than anything listening to the other people's opinion of where they believe the city should go. You know, this is a job interview, and if you're looking for somebody who believes in limited government, believes in lower taxes, who uses common sense when he makes decisions, I've always been known as a straight talker. I don't beat around the bush. I can be polite, but I'll also be straightforward. I'm a hardworking, conservative guy. And I think I bring some leadership skills that will be very valuable to the city commission. I'm a budget balancer and a problem solver. And that's part of what government is, a big part of what government is. I've taken for many years ideas and concepts and turned them into realities in the building business. And I'll take that same approach when I'm working for the city and the citizens of Fargo. And the goal is always to create good public policy that's fair for all the people. And that's exactly what I'll concentrate on. And I would appreciate your vote on June 11th.
Thank you. Delson?
I've seen firsthand the power of hard-working community. Every decision I make and every policy I fight for is about making life better for all of us. I understand the struggles of the middle class because I've lived them. And that's why I'm committed to keeping our middle class strong and building the Fargo where everyone can be successful. My campaign slogan is simple: tomorrow starts today, and that's why I asked for support on June 11th. Thank you.
All right, as Rocky said, thank you all again for joining us this evening, and thank you to the candidates for putting your name in the hat and for being here this evening as well. I would just ask everyone to visit votefmwf.com, a nonpartisan election resource designed to empower local community members with information on local candidates like those that you see here today. So go ahead and check out votefmwf.com. It's one of our efforts to try to increase civic engagement. We'll also have the recording of tonight's debate there as well. Additionally, tomorrow the Chamber and Building Industry Association will be hosting a West Fargo candidate forum over at the West Fargo Commission Chambers at 4. So we invite you to join us for that, as well as our upcoming Cass County Commission and Horace City Council candidate forums June 4th and 5th. More information is on our website about all of these. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you.